Cullinan. Vice Chair Lennon.
Present.
Youth Member Mellinger.
Present.
Arborist Meserve.
Here.
Commissioner Misaraka.
Aye.
Commissioner Tolbert.
Here.
And Chair Donnelly.
Here.
Okay.
The next item is to consider if there's anybody that wants to make a change in the agenda. I'll start with the commissioners. Anybody have any concerns? Anybody in the public comment? And I'll ask for a remote.
I was just going to ask, Mike, are we going to do a Big Belly update today?
That's going to be part of
Staff report?
staff report.
Yep, thank you.
Okay. Okay. I'll ask for a motion to approve the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Roll call.
Sorry. Commissioner Cullinan. Yes. Vice Chair Lennon.
Yes.
Commissioner Misaraka.
Aye.
Commissioner Tolbert.
Yes.
Chair Donnelly.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
At this point, I'm asked to read this regarding comments from the public. At this time, members of the public may comment on any item not appearing on the agenda. It is recommended that you keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Under state law, unless otherwise permitted under the Ralph Brown Act, the merits of the matters presented of this item cannot be discussed or acted upon by the Commission at this time. For items that appear on the agenda, the public will be invited to make comments at the time the item comes up for the Commission's consideration. Upon being acknowledged by the chair, please step to the podium, speak into the microphone, and begin by stating and spelling your name. Members of the public present in the chambers will be called first, and then those who are attending via Zoom. Thank you. The first thing on the agenda next is the consent calendars. All items listed on the consent calendar are considered to be routine and to be acted on by a single action. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless members of the council or staff request specific items to be removed for separate action. So could I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
Patricia, and then Jess, you second? Or Charlie?
I thought it had to be made in the official way, so I made it. You can call me a second if you want. Whatever you want to do.
Okay. Okay. Commissioner Cullinan.
Yes.
Vice Chair Lennon.
Yes.
Commissioner Misaraka.
Aye.
Commissioner Tolbert.
Yes.
Chair Donnelly.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Next, we have a very special guest and a presentation to our council, Connie Schelein, of the chair of the Cultural and Fine Arts Commission. Connie and I had a brief lunch a couple months ago now, it seems like. But we've discovered we have potentially a considerable number of overlapping interests to our two commissions. And Connie has at least two hats that she's worn here. One is that she, besides chair of the Cultural and Fine Arts Commission, she's been promoting through that commission cultural planning for the city of Sonoma and Sonoma Valley to be nationally recognized as a model community for arts and culture. And so, secondly, she's also very involved with the Creative Bridges, which some of you may have just read in the recent Index Tribune. The Creative Bridges is a Sonoma Valley coalition of organizations dedicated to improving arts education for all K-12 youth. It presented a strategic arts education plan to the District Board of Trustees on November 9th, and the plan would utilize forever annual funding of $500,000 that the district will receive from Proposition 28, which California voters approved in 2022 to boost arts and education in the K-12 schools. So we're so pleased that you could come and meet with us today, Connie, and especially tell us about the Commission's interest in making us a recognized cultural and arts center.
Thank you. How do I start the presentation? And should I control it, or do you want to? I'll just tell you, I think. While we're waiting, I'll tell you a little bit. I'm here with a couple different hats. One, as John mentioned, was from the Cultural and Fine Arts Commission. And one is from a group that you probably haven't heard of called the Creative Alliance. And it's a subcommittee of the Chamber of Commerce. It was started years and years ago and was an organization of nonprofits coming together, seeing how we can work together to make this wonderful community even better. And so I'll tell you which hat I'm talking from, because it, as you know, as commissioners, there are certain things you can do and certain things you can't. I'm also vice chair, not chair, of the Cultural and Fine Arts Commission. I'm really excited that our commissions are now talking to each other and in sync. I think this is, again, a wonderful way to start collaborations. And obviously, Parks and Rec and Cultural and Fine Arts have a lot in common, including the culture of the community. I'd like to update you on some local arts initiatives because there's, as I mentioned, there's several things happening. And thanks, John, for mentioning Creative Bridges and the work we've been doing with our youth. I have relocated about 8 years ago from Colorado, where I had a career in arts education and also working with a city that transformed itself from a beet farming town into an arts community, one of the top arts communities in the country. So I was part of the transformation of that and got to see how things can change when groups collaborate and work together. So that's one reason I'm kind of into this. I'm also on the Sonoma Valley Museum of Art. I'm on a board member there, the Community Center, and Creative Alliance, Creative Bridges. And the reason I've done all that is because I'm really interested in groups knowing what one another is doing instead of in their silos. And so in order to move together, row together, it seemed like a really important thing to do for this period of time. The first hat that I'd like to put on is from the Cultural and Fine Arts Commission. And our commission is 20 years old. So it's been around for quite a long time. It oversees the City of Sonoma's public art policy. And it was, and that public art policy was written in 2009. It's in the process of being reviewed right now by a subcommittee of CFAC. We're looking at this 20-year-old public art policy plan, and it includes things like where sculptures are located in different areas, how they might be funded, a number of things like that. So the overlap, as you can see with parks, is pretty strong. And we also do treasure artist, and we also select the student artist of the year. Next slide, please. I'm going to put on a different hat now, and that's from the Creative Alliance, this group that's part of the chamber, the museum, the community center, the vintage house, a number of organizations, very loosely formed, but we came together with a vision a while ago, 5 years ago, and thought, what if we were all working together? What would happen? So this is not CFAC. This is coming from the Creative Alliance. So basically, we'd started to look at if we could. There's an awfully lot of arts and creativity going on in this community. So how could we include the arts as part of the brand, including obviously the historic aspects, which are huge in this community, as well as wine. Next slide. We're a community of makers, as many of you know. Artists, musicians, winemakers, chefs, people are making things everywhere in this community. It's one of the things that attracted me here and many others. And it's also interesting that cultural tourists, if those people that come to visit us, there's statistics that say that cultural tourists spend 3 times the amount of time in a community that they're visiting as wine tourists, and they spend 3 times the amount of money as wine tourists. And often they're the same people, so same target audiences that can be cross-marketed to. Next slide. Sonoma County employs 134,000 are employed in creative businesses. So it is an economic driver. $80.4 million was generated annually by just 42 nonprofit arts groups in Sonoma County. And there's 2,684 full-time jobs that have been generated just by 42 arts nonprofits in our county. So the creative economy is here. It suffered during the pandemic greatly. Next slide. So the goals of the Creative Alliance is to elevate the creative economy, improve diversity, unify our community, do a plan. And we're delighted that the city has started doing the general plan, because I think piggybacking into including the arts is really pretty wonderful. And to really think about rebranding Sonoma Valley to include the arts, visual and performing arts, which is kind of a fun thing to do because it's already here. Next slide. A number of organizations have been in their own silos doing wonderful things in this community. Imagine what they could do together. Imagine if we're all rowing in the same direction and attracting both visitors, but also enhancing our community members' possibilities. Next slide. So over the last 5 years, we've been working pretty hard. And the first 2 are pretty exciting. We have now started revising the city public art policy. And the second, improving SVUSD's TK-12 arts education with a strategic plan. That is hopefully going to be adopted tomorrow night. And that will change a number of students' lives pretty quickly, because $500,000 spent on visual and performing arts each year for our children will really start to restore an arts education ecosystem that was damaged by some tax initiatives years ago. Next slide. So what we've done so far, we have done a lot of research. We've looked into tens of about 20 communities, looking at how they've revised their cultural planning and how they've transformed their community. And we've done a lot of community engagement. We've designed the strategic arts education plan with 40 plus nonprofits coming together, working on arts education for the schools. And that was a lift to get 45 nonprofits together, all in agreement, but it's happening, which is exciting. Go ahead. A lot of our neighboring communities have done cultural plans as a way to really build transformation and bring the arts up in terms of marketing, and also to prioritize the arts for general plan, for instance. What just happened with the school district was they realized that the arts hadn't been prioritized but had been pushed aside and somewhat neglected. And the same thing can happen, I think, here. What we would love you to think about is the arts as well as, sports in the recreation plan that you guys will be working on. And next slide. So this is the Strategic Arts Education Plan. It is a 22-page document. It's a 5-year plan, and it will hopefully bring visual art and music back into the elementary schools so that we can then build back, for instance, the music program at the high school, which has suffered greatly. Theater has also been challenged. So getting performing arts into the elementary and also visual art will really flow upward, we hope. Next slide. So what do we need from you? We'd love to increase communication. I think this is a really great start, and it'd be good for you to come visit us so that we can hear what you're doing also, because I think that first of all, having a Parks and Rec Commission is a pretty phenomenal, wonderful thing, and a lot of people don't know about you yet, so I think that would be helpful. We'd love for you to champion the arts, work collaboratively. Any funding thoughts that go across would be helpful, and prioritize arts and culture. Next. We believe Sonoma Valley can be a world-class work of art. We think it may already be there. All the pieces are here. It's unlike any community I've ever seen. So it's just a matter of putting the package together. Next. So just imagine what we can do together. Thank you.
Thank you, Connie. Does anybody have any comments, questions, suggestions? Patricia.
I wanted to know where the 500,000, is that already allocated to Sonoma because of population or some other?
So in last November, California voters passed Prop 28, and it actually it comes out of the general fund, and it is forever money. It's calculated by free and reduced school lunches, Title I, Title III, Title IV. And so we have a specific formulation based on our demographics that we will receive. But it's really exciting, and it jumpstarts it. It's not the whole answer, because over the last 45 years of neglect, there's a lot to be restored. But I'm sure our young person on the commission will attest to the fact that we need to give more support to arts education.
And then in terms of your accounting it first to elementary schools, is there a specific way that you're going to separate that, or just evenly between all?
Creative Bridges is a community organization that is an advocacy organization for arts education, 40-plus nonprofits that say there's a large public will here for arts education. And what our suggestion is to turn over the prioritization of that money in the school district to the visual and performing arts teachers who know best how to rebuild the programs. Their suggestion has been start with elementary, because that is where, for instance, a child learns to play a musical instrument, and if it's missing, then, or choir, or whatever, then it affects the high school programs eventually.
I would think, I'm curious about the in overlap with parks. It seems that you mentioned planning for public art, and I know several years ago a relationship with the Sonoma Valley Museum of Art had a rotating sculptures through the plaza, but can you say a little bit about what you envision about public art and being part of the planning for our parks?
We hope that now I've got the Creative Alliance hat on, not the Cultural and Fine Arts Commission. We hope that there will be a process, a cultural planning process, where there's a public art master plan created. Because often art gets a little political if you don't have a good public art master plan. Things like entryways, where a community can really enhance the entryways, needs to be considered. Bike paths beyond the plaza into a number of other places. The museum's been very involved in this Creative Alliance because they have been donating a number of temporary art pieces. So, the county has actually they hired a consultant, and they have now created a public art master plan for the county, of which we will be tagging into that information. So most really good art cities have a plan. They also have a plan for donations, because those can get a little tricky if you get everybody wanting to donate something, but some people get offended if you don't take something. So you have to have a good policy. Even though it doesn't seem political, art can be political too.
Well, using that framework, we're obviously working on a number. If you stay for the whole meeting, you'll hear about some of the parks projects around town. But it seems at a very minimal level, and sitting in the audience today, we're moving forward with Olson Olson Park as of our last meeting, and there was talk about a public, a piece of art or a mural incorporated into that. And so maybe just keeping in the backs of our minds, we won't know how the process and the official, how it fits into the strategic plan, but maybe we could consult your commission on how we might get some public works of art into these new renovation plans.
We have a temporary subcommittee on the Cultural and Fine Arts Commission that works with temporary art. We have been, because of Brown Act violations, we need to subcommittee everything
Sure.
so we can move forward on a number of projects. And so we're ready and willing. We've been working with the vintage. We selected this last time. We have a number of people that are very knowledgeable on our commission.
And who's your Mike? Like, we have Mike, Public Works. Who's your city person that comes to your meetings to present to the staff? Staff person.
Sarah Tracy,
Oh,
right
Sarah.
here,
Hi, Sarah.
and Rebecca Barr.
Okay, thank you.
I think that's it. Thank you very much, Connie. Let's keep in touch and check in from time to time and see how things progress, and where we can cooperate. And right now, there's a wonderful arts display in the plaza, holiday lights, so it's really wonderful. Thank you very much. At this point, I think we're ready to move into the regular calendar. And the first item that I'll announce on that is item 4.1, request for tree removals at 3 different locations: 645 Austin Street, 1189 Cox Street, and 631 Este Madera Court. Do we have a staff presentation?
You don't have to put anything up.
Oh, okay.
You're fine. Sorry. No PowerPoint today, but just wanted to, this is Jennifer Gates, Community Development Director. I'm helping out Mike and his team, specifically with these tree removals and then the next item as well. So before you tonight is a request for tree removals as stated at 645 Austin Street, 1189 Cox Street, and 631 Este Madera. So these were the 3 complete applications that the city has received since the last meeting. And these applications were reviewed by staff as well as the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Commissioner / Arborist, Mr. Meserve. The following is kind of just a highlights over each. I know that the last meeting you guys wanted to take each one separately, so I'll ask that first. Do you want me to go through all 3, or do you want me to go one at a time?
I think we should go one at a time.
Okay, so the first application is 645 Austin Avenue. It's just a request to remove a silver maple located in the front yard setback. And per the arborist report, there's a significant decay and potential hazard. And staff's recommendation is to approve this removal and require the replacement with one 24-inch box tree from the city's approved tree list. And the applications were all attached to your staff report, so you should be able to have reviewed all those ahead of time.
We have our city arborist here, John Meserve. Do you have anything you want to add, John, or as we go along through these?
No, I read the report. I saw the tree. It's a nice report by Bartlett Tree Service, and this tree is definitely hazardous and needs to come out.
Okay.
Next one.
Next.
Do we make a motion on these separately?
Well, you need to open for public comment before you can make a motion. So we can go through all three and then open for public comment because I see a lot of people tonight. So I think I recognize some faces. So there may be some public comments at different times. So the next one is 1189 Cox Street. And this is a request to remove a sweet gum tree located in the planter strip. This tree roots are causing significant damage to the sidewalk and the water line, and then staff's recommendation again is to approve the removal and require replacement with one 24-inch box tree. With this one, though, depending on the type of tree, depends on the location, that recommendation for placement. So if it's the desire is to have one of our city trees that is larger root system, it would be recommended to be placed in the front yard versus in the median again. Questions? Okay. And then the last one is 631 Este, Madera. This is a request to remove a blue Atlas cedar from the front yard. As noted in arborist report, while there is no significant damage at this time, there is potential for damage caused by a root system, and damage has already occurred on the sidewalk. The applicant has also noted concerns about droppings from the tree damaging their roof. This is one that staff's recommending that the commissioners discuss the application. And if the commission does decide to approve the removal, staff recommends that it be replaced again with a 24-inch box tree. The reason why staff is not making a recommendation one way or another at this time is because there's not significant damage currently existing. And John can talk more about this tree if you have questions.
This one's a challenge for me. So I'm not a big fan of taking trees out because of leaves or needles or impacts on a roof. I think those are part of maintenance, should be part of regular maintenance and not a reason to take a tree out. This is a large tree. It's doing damage to the sidewalk. There's a lot of surface roots, and that damage could damage the foundation, or those roots could damage the foundation in the future. I didn't see any damage there right now, so this is all maybe and possibly in the future, and I'm not sure really what to do with it.
So with that, at the very beginning of the staff report, staff had provided just the more information about what the code section says about tree alteration or removal or relocation for permits. And I'll just go ahead and read that for you as well as the public. So the granting or denying of a tree removal permit should be based upon reasonable standards, including A, the condition of the tree with respect to its general health, structural condition, hazards, potential, and proximity to existing or proposed structures. B, the necessity of the tree removal to allow construction of improvements or otherwise allow economic or other reasonable enjoyment of the property. And C, the number, species, age, size, and location of existing trees in the area and the effect of the requested removal on shade, air pollution, historic value, scenic beauty, and general welfare of the city as a whole. So with that, that concludes staff's presentation and recommendations. And we're available to answer any questions.
One of the things that I'd like to see going forward, or at least have an update on, is the current status of the city's approved tree list. After our last meeting, I did quite a bit of research and gathered a lot of information from SEC, which led me to some incredible resources that could be used to improve that list. So my question is, has any forward momentum been happening? And if not, how do we do that? Like, how do we go about updating our list? Because these resources, I believe, would make it pretty simple. So as long as we're approving things and requiring replacement, seems to me we ought to have a really fantastic approved list.
That'll be part of the discussion at the meeting on January 23rd when we're having our joint meetings focused solely on trees.
Well, I saw the Blue Atlas at, on Corte Madera. It's a beautiful tree, and I understand, I agree with John about that just because it's on the roof shouldn't be the reason to take such a tree out. But the risk of root expansion, which is not there yet against the foundation of the house, I just wonder, is it possible that there could be a trench dug between the foundation and the tree to see how much root growth is there and to see if they could be pruned or if a barrier could be established before one considers taking such a big tree out?
I think that would be a reasonable response to get a little bit more information. If that happened, if there was a trench dug along the base of the foundation at the corner, both sides of the corner, you could identify large roots or significant roots and make maybe a little better decision about whether it's going to be problematic or not. And also with the possibility of pruning roots and putting a root barrier in if there was. There may be so many big roots that's not practical, but without seeing it, we're not going to really know. So wouldn't be unreasonable in terms of a next step.
And at present, you mentioned it's the same tree is not currently disrupting this. It is currently disrupting the sidewalk and the driveway, or what is it at risk of doing in the near term?
It's lifted the sidewalk in 3 or 4 places.
Okay.
Also the driveway a little bit. They've been ground down, so there's no trip fall. That's the primary damage. And there are large surface roots between the tree and the house and the tree and the side and the driveway. But the damage right now is just to the sidewalk, and it's not significant, but it has been addressed.
So I saw the picture, and how many feet between the tree and the house and the tree and the sidewalk? I didn't consciously look when I was there.
9 plus or minus 9 feet between
Both ones?
between the tree and the house, and further than that to the sidewalk. I did not measure that. The resident might have that, but I would say at least 15 feet to the sidewalk.
So it's already disrupted the sidewalk, and that's the thought that it's potentially, or they just haven't pushed up yet, is that right? For the house, because it's closer to the house.
It's closer to the house, and roots can go, it's on a perimeter foundation, so the roots can go under that perimeter foundation and then expand radially and can cause a lifting of the corner of a house or cracking of a foundation. I've certainly seen that in the past, definitely a possibility. We didn't see any damage, any cracking of the foundation or disruption of windows or siding. That doesn't mean there's not damage there, but I didn't see anything.
Okay, thank you.
Now for public comment, is anybody here who would like to comment on this?
Sorry, just a little bit tall. Good evening. My name is Carlisle Silvestri. Thank you for having me. I'm the homeowner's assistant at 1189 Cox Street. We have requested the necessary permits, as you know, to remove a mature liquid amber tree at the sidewalk of our home. The buckling sidewalk was brought to our attention by our insurance company, pardon me, that it is a trip hazard for pedestrians. In an effort to pursue every avenue available, we sought out John Meserve, a local arborist, to consult on the tree. After his inspection, the professional opinion was that any work to grind down the existing roots and re-pour the concrete at the sidewalk would simply be kicking the problem down the road. Ultimately, one of his long-term suggestions is to remove it and replace the tree with one of the pre-approved neighborhood trees from the district list. And our contractor has submitted Mr. Meserve's full report, and I've brought additional copies, but I think you all have them digitally and all the nice things. Given our home's proximity to Jean K.T. Carter Park and Playground, the safety issues that the buckling poses, and that many of our neighboring trees have already been replaced with smaller varieties, we hope this decision will be an easy one. Thank you for your consideration.
I'm David Hall. I'm the homeowner of 631, the more complicated tree on this. I'm actually just recently purchased the home. We've lived there for a couple of years renting, and the homeowners wanted to sell, so we just purchased it, which brought up this application to remove it, which it's 9 feet from the house. It's a very big tree. It's a very nice tree, great in a forest, not 9 feet from your house, where it's just a matter of time before the foundation is going to get affected by it. The roots, the tree extends over a significant portion of the house. We're concerned about, obviously, the roots, and just don't want to wait to find the damage to the foundation of the house and find out then we have to fix that as well before we address this issue. And certainly replacing a tree is no issue. It's just it was planted too close to the house. So, thank you.
Any further comment? I think we can bring this back to the commission. Any further discussion? Social,
There are no hands raised on Zoom, by the way.
nothing on Zoom. Thank you.
I have a question. I was unclear what the recommendation was on the Este Madera, the staff recommendation.
There was no staff recommendation. It was for discussion by the commission.
There is a note here about the recommendation, 24-inch box
If
tree.
it was to be approved, then you would make a recommendation to replace.
I have a question probably for John. So generally speaking, is this just a matter of time before it needs to be removed? Is this as one says, kicking it down the road situation?
I think it is just a matter of time. It's really one of those wrong tree in the wrong place. It's been fine till now or thereabouts, and at some point, just because of the size of the tree, it's going to be more of a problem. I can't tell you if that's 3 years, 5 years, or 20 years, but yeah, it's likely to be an issue with the foundation
That's what it
at
sounds
some
like.
point. Yes.
Thank you very much.
I think we're ready to, do we need a motion on this for each individually? Or
If somebody can make a motion to approve all at once, or you can choose to go individually. I'll leave that up to you.
I'll make a motion to approve removal of all three.
Second.
With the replacement.
Yes.
Okay, Commissioner Cullinan? Commissioner, or Vice Chair Lennon?
Aye.
Commissioner Mizuraka? Commissioner Tolbert?
Aye.
Chair Donnelly?
yes,
The motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
thank you. The next item on our agenda is to discuss and consider the preferred concept plan for the Sonoma Valley Oaks Parks.
You have one right in front of that.
I'm sorry.
There's one in front.
Oh, that's right, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Yeah.
the historical tree.
Sorry, have to back up. 4.2, request to designate a valley oak tree located at 572 4th Street East as an historic tree or a heritage tree. We have to clarify that, I think. I think the request was to declare it as a heritage tree.
So, again, Jennifer Gates, Community Development Director. And so before you tonight is an applicant request to designate a valley oak located in their front yard at 572 4th Street East as historic, is how it was written. The ordinance itself, the Heritage Tree Ordinance, was written in the 1970s and was really geared towards designating heritage trees that then would be dedicated to the city. So our ordinance is really focused more on that. And then the historic section was more if the city or the applicant or the property owner were not in agreement, then the historic designation came into play, was how that ordinance was written. It's very interesting. I haven't seen anything like this. And my understanding is we only have one other heritage tree in the city, is what I've heard. So with that, I did provide some information from our code, but I do want to just highlight a little bit about the tree. So according to the arborist report, the valley oak itself is approximately over 250 years old, and it's healthy and structurally sound. It also meets the measurement requirements of over 50 inches at 24 inches above grade. It would meet the definition of a heritage tree as an outstanding specimen of its species as well as the size. If the commission believes that the tree meets the criteria and should be dedicated as a heritage tree, the applicant may dedicate the tree to the city. This dedication must be accepted by resolution by the city council, and it has to be an agreement between the city as well as the property owner. If the city and or property owner doesn't want to dedicate or accept the dedication, the Parks and Recreation Commission can declare the tree as a designated historic tree. This dedication would not restrict the use or maintenance of the tree as historic. Heritage tree means the city takes on the responsibility for that tree. So with that, I do see the applicant in the room, but this concludes staff's presentation. And if you guys have any questions or clarifications on the ordinance, please let me know.
I have a comment.
Sure.
Luddite question. Dedicating it to the city. What exactly does that mean?
It means the city takes ownership of the tree.
So it's a gift.
It's
Okay.
dedicated to the city. The city would then maintain that tree. That's how a dedication would work.
Okay.
So that's where I'm going with, we only have one, and there's a lot more details that would need to be worked out. This ordinance was older and hasn't been used. So it's an interesting request that we wanted to honor because our code does allow it. But further conversation would need to be had if this was something that was desirable by the commission.
And then, so if there's this tree on someone's property and it becomes property of the city, is there much information? Not that I'm asking you for that information, but I'm wondering, does the homeowner, landowner, receive information on what they're required to do and not do around the tree?
So that could be worked out in the agreement itself. That would have to be written up. So that specifically the code says that the property owner dedicates the right of access for maintenance and protection, and the dedication has to be accepted by the resolution of the city council. And it's subject to conditions that'll be case by case basis.
To me, this feels like a city council decision ultimately that,
On the ultimate,
Right.
Parks and Rec would make a recommendation.
sure.
And anticipating this joint study meeting that the tree committee had its first meeting,
We haven't
January
met-
23.
Yes.
We identified that the last city tree inventory was 30 years old. It was done in 1994. So if we begin to do a new one, we could begin to identify heritage trees that would qualify, that might be nominated, and then we'd have to go back to the fact that I think you'll notice the city had a tree fund, but it's been ended some time ago, so there'd be a question of funding, but that's on the horizon.
I'll just step in here. It's a great tree, and there are fewer and fewer big valley oaks in the valley and in town. I think it would be, in some way, a fantastic idea to designate it somehow to be preserved and taken care of.
Do we have a motion to approve this?
Public comment.
So is this something that if we recommend it and then we could recommend that the property owner contribute a small amount to the maintenance of the tree every year so it doesn't fall completely on the city? to maintain this tree? Is that part of what the city council would,
It can be considered as part of the conditions for a dedication. I've seen that in other cases, not necessarily a tree, but in other cases, yes.
well, because, people move or pass away or whatever, and somebody new comes in and that sort of solidifies an understanding of the responsibility to the new owner.
It is.
Thank you, John. I'm Kathleen Ball. I'm the property owner. Thanks, John. I didn't know you were going to be here tonight. My husband Dave and I, our main focus is the tree is well cared for. So, Patricia, to meet your comment about contribution for caring for the tree, whether it's historic or heritage, means nothing to us. What's most important is the tree is allowed to grow and be healthy. That's the primary concern, and the reason we designated it. When I presented the application to the city, it was really unclear what we were doing because it's very difficult to find any language online about the heritage tree status. So we submitted our application, our letter, and coincidentally, John was the person that was recommended to us to take a look at the tree. And so we submitted his report along with it, and here we are. So whatever the result, what's important to us is the tree is well maintained, cared for, because we've heard from neighbors that other trees on our property have been removed on the past that were beautiful, beautiful oak trees, and we don't want to see that happen. We're certainly not going to do it, and we're certainly not moving. So, we're here for the duration. So, thank you. Mm-hmm.
Any further comment from the public? Bring it back to the commission. Any further discussion?
It's nice to be talking about saving a tree for once. We're always talking about cutting them down. So, I mean, I don't take any issue with wanting to preserve it, and then ultimately it sounds like it's city council's decision on what the arrangement between the homeowner and the city is. So we don't have to concern ourselves with that piece. I wouldn't want to get in the way. So I'm fine with it. But
Would you like to make a motion?
unless anyone has any other discussion, I didn't want to jump in. But I move to approve the tree application for heritage designation.
I'll second that.
Commissioner Cullinan? Yes. Vice Chair Lennon?
Aye.
Commissioner Mizuraka? Commissioner Tolbert?
Yes.
Chair Donnelly? Yes. The motion passes unanimously.
And, concept plan is presented by Ann Baker of LandCulture. Thank you, Ann. Welcome back.
Thank you. Nice to be
Hey.
here.
And just before you get started, I'm going to politely recuse myself from this agenda item because it falls in my neighborhood. Thank you. I'm just come back when you're done.
Sounds good. Well, it's nice to be here. So we're here tonight. Ann Baker with LandCulture.
And could you hold on just 1 second, please? Chair Donnelly, I believe it's appropriate for us to get the alternate up on the
Exactly.
dais right now
That's what I-
as Commissioner Lennon leaves
Mm-hmm.
to hear this item. Vice Chair Lennon?
Yes. Maria Perez. Welcome.
Yeah, and this is our alternate, Maria Perez Allen, and great that she's here tonight. And then just before Ann gets going, I'm just going to give a real quick introduction. Tonight, under an existing contract, Public Works requested LandCulture LLP lead a participatory community design process to look at alternatives for adding toddler play elements and renovating existing features of Sonoma Valley Oaks Park. LandCulture LLP created a site conditions assessment and 3 alternative concept designs that illustrated different approaches to introducing play features into the park. They also worked with staff to hold a community design review meeting to hear community discussion and feedback about the 3 alternative designs, which was very well attended. LLP and staff then conducted an online survey to hear additional comments and community feedback about the proposed park improvement from residents unable to attend the on-site meeting. LandCulture LLP is presenting a preferred concept plan based on the combined community feedback and direction from staff. The preferred concept shows the community supported play elements and site improvements. Staff requests that the commission review the preferred plan, hear additional community feedback, and recommend LandCulture LLP to proceed to the PS&E plan specifications and estimate construction documents phase of the design. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Ann.
Great, thank you, Mike. That was a great introduction. Yeah, so this Ann Baker with LandCulture LLP. We're an ecological landscape architecture firm. We have an office in Petaluma and in Santa Cruz. We do mostly public parks and open spaces, also restoration, and we also do commercial landscapes. And I'm here tonight presenting the preferred concept plan for Valley Oaks Park. And we're asking the commission to approve the plan so we can move forward into construction documents. This is an existing conditions map of the park. It's a very nice park. It's kind of dated to the built in the late 80s or slightly after that. It's got a very formal design, as you can see. It's got this very central round turf area that's really favored by the residents. Really like having that open turf area. We're noting a few trees that actually, after producing this existing condition plan, were removed. So there's some trees that need to be replaced in the park. And then we're identifying on this plan a couple areas that are these kind of, we're calling them cheeks of lawn that are outside the circular lawn area that we could remove the turf there, which is not being presently used as turf, and introduce play features in those spaces. So those are 2 spaces that are identified in this diagram that could be used for play area. And we were also asked by the community in our program to add some picnic tables near the play areas. So that's, and then there's some photos there of the existing park. And I should mention the way the park is designed is it has a perimeter that's at the street level, and then you drop down 2.5 feet to the lawn area. So it's kind of a sunken garden. It's a little bit of an Italianate style design. So after doing the existing conditions map, we organized a community. We actually created 3 alternative concept plans and walked the community through the program, which is the list of things that we were asked to develop in the park, through that existing conditions drawing that I just showed you, and 3 alternative concept drawings. And it was a really well-attended meeting. We had about 35 people, and we had groups in maybe 5 or 6 tables, and everybody sat down together and made lots of notes and reported out on what they liked and they didn't like. So that was a great meeting and really well organized. And then to follow up with that, as Mike mentioned, we did an online survey because we wanted to make sure we reached out to people who weren't able to attend that meeting at the park on a Saturday. And so we put together the general feedback that we heard from the community. And the elements the community found to be the most important is they really wanted us, there was a consensus around fixing the landscape on the upper level around the park, which all the ground cover elements underneath the trees hadn't been watered during the drought. So all the landscape strips around the park were pretty weedy, and people really wanted that to be improved. They also gave us some direction. They didn't want sand or DG in the park. It's a little more formal, so if we were going to introduce new paving, they would prefer it be concrete or unit pavers. We heard that people liked adding some additional shade trees in the lawn, and then also they liked new picnic areas closer to the play elements. And they really liked the natural style play elements we proposed because they fit in well with the arbor there. The community was a little more mixed on whether or not just to have 1 additional playground or have 2. So we didn't really hear a clear consensus either in the community meeting or in the online survey, whether we should have 1 or 2. There was a clear consensus that they wanted a new play area. and people liked. We proposed an additional picnic area across the lawn from the play elements, and people liked that idea. And then we got some specific feedback on different play structure elements that people liked. They really liked the toddler slide. They liked the swings and some of the small play elements that we proposed. So I'll walk you through the design. So the things that are in bright color are things that we're adding. And kind of starting in the lower left corner, you can see that we're adding a toddler play area with a slide. So there's an accessible access to the slide, which is the main entry path. To the left there is an accessible path. And so it's a little bit of a circuitous route for people to be able to use the slide accessibly, but there's also these little toddler log climbers that you can climb up and down, and there's a set of stairs. So there's basically 3 ways to get up and down the slide there. And then we're proposing a swing, which is shown in the image on the right, and also a little playhouse element that's kind of looks like a little bit of a pine mountain that's also an inclusive and accessible feature. Other things that we're proposing to improve in the park, so number 11 there is the existing arbor structure, which is a beautiful structure. It's got a vine on it that appears to be dying. So we're proposing to remove the vine and kind of make sure that the structure is in good shape, restain it, and put the same vine back on. It's a nice wisteria vine. Should do fine. I think maybe it declined during the drought. And then we're also proposing number 10 there to screen some existing utility boxes, which are pretty unfortunately placed and highly visible in the park. Number 12 is that idea of improving all those landscape strips around the park, so introducing new drought-tolerant ground covers to grow under those existing trees. And then you can see the number 8 is the new proposed picnic area, which is on the opposite side of the lawn. So what we really did was kept this long axis kind of from one corner to the other for play, and then tried to introduce more trees, which you're also seeing in the lawn area around where people would be gathering to increase available shade in the play in the whole park, basically. There was a couple other things that came up from the community. There was one resident who was very concerned about invasive Mexican feathergrass in the park, and so we'd like to take a look at ways to mulch that out and introduce different plants into the park. And I think that the one other thing I'll mention is the number 7 labeled areas are areas that we're proposing would be kept open for future play elements. So what we're proposing now is to kind of move forward more modestly with one play area for toddlers, and then we've identified these 2 areas that could become more future play areas if the community desires it. And so this is a way to move forward within the budget that the city's identified, which is $200,000, which isn't a ton of money to do a park renovation. And that way we'll be able to incrementally improve the park if the community wants to continue to do so. And this is just some more close-up features of the slide and the little toddler log element and the little mountain play area and the swing. We're proposing chips for the accessible surfacing in the play area, and then as I mentioned, unit pavers around the new picnic tables, and then some log elements kind of dividing the play area from the path, for example, so kids aren't running across the path when other people are jogging by, things like that. So that's our design, and really looking forward to hearing your feedback and any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, comments from the commission?
Okay, if I ask a question.
Certainly.
The log climbers, is that real wood?
Yeah.
And how do you keep that from cracking and splitting and falling apart in the near term?
Well, they're usually we're going to source Idaho locust, like a really hard, long-lasting wood. Yeah, and actually all the natural play features are sourced from sustainably harvested Idaho locust. So that's because that's a tree that you can coppice. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had a question, and
Mike can answer this. The number 7 play area that's on the bottom of this park, wasn't that park originally designed as a catchment basin for overflow water? And wouldn't that be an issue?
Now, the first part of your question is, was this an overflow catchment basin originally as designed? My understanding is yes, that's correct.
Okay, and so the area, that wouldn't be an ideal area.
This is 7 here.
This is 7.
There's
There's
two,
there's two sevens.
there's two sevens in there, but both are for future
Right.
consideration.
That's the one, so
Right.
she's talking about the inside
Inside
the
the-
circle one.
Yeah,
Okay.
so my understanding from meeting with Oriana on site is that it is, it's not really a catchment basin as I've seen it, because the drain inlet is at the bottom of the center of the circle, you know, so it's not like that circle is meant to fill up with water. It's meant to be free draining. So if we were to introduce a play element there, it'd be better to have it be a permeable space to not increase the, you know, impervious pavement there, but it shouldn't actually affect in any significant way that capacity.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask the same thing. In terms of would it affect the water flow into it since it's submerged or 2 feet below? In terms of would any of the stuff that you're proposing to build and not saving for future space affect that? Or
No, none of it should affect that. Yeah, there's a little strip of additional paving we're proposing. I wish I had a pointer, but you know, you'd see where that kind of like figure 8 shape is next to the arbor. That's the little gray strip there is a little additional amount of unit pavers so that the tables fit a little better into that space and allow for community. There's some community gatherings that have been taking place in the park pretty frequently. So we wanted to be able to add a few tables, but we also noticed that people like to do walking circuits through there. So we didn't want to put the tables in the way so that people couldn't walk there. So we need to add a tiny bit of paving, and that would be using permeable unit pavers.
Great.
How much available shade is currently available there?
Well, you can see there's quite a bit of open space in the lawn itself. Most of the rest of the park is very well planted with trees. It doesn't show up that well on this image, but there's almost too many trees in some regard. And unfortunately, a lot of the trees are on the upper level are planted in kind of narrow strips, which you guys have been discussing both times I've come here. And they have elevated roots due to they were in irrigated turf. I mean, I might be really interested to meet John out there if he was available, or he says, yes, please, yay, and look at the trees and kind of think what the best way to manage them in the future, because they're not that old. They're maybe about 25 years old. And they're, you know, I think they could be managed better, and the new trees will make a difference in the lawn area in particular and around the picnic areas, make those more comfortable on hot days. Did I answer your question for you?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for a beautiful presentation. I just had a question about the public engagement process. Was there any discussion or any comments, either online or in person, brought up about accessibility for children that don't have traditional abilities in the design process?
That didn't come up specifically in the design process, but it is required in the design, you know, that the surfacing be accessible and access to all the structures be provided. And so that is present in the design. You know, there certainly are choices of play structures if there was a stronger voice in the community for like a more inclusive swing, for example. That would be something we'd be happy to provide. It's hard when there's only 3 play elements because you want them to be used, you know. So we're trying to make it all accessible and create a space that's actually for imaginative play as well, which is the most inclusive play.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think we're ready to go to public comment. Thank you, Ann.
Mm-hmm. They're jumping up.
Hi, my name's Jeff Roush. I live in that neighborhood on Ingram Drive. Been there about 4 years, have watched the neighborhood change dramatically in terms of a lot of people, young people moving in, particularly with pandemic and kind of the way the work environment's changed with families. And it's wonderful. It's energizing. It's kind of great to see them all out and about and active. My grandson comes up and visits me quite often at our home, and we love that park. And the circle is actually a little bit of a racetrack for him. His name is Edison. But Eddie calls it the park with no toys. And it's not a sad thing. He loves it there because he's got a great imagination. But I know that all of the other parks that I've seen in this wonderful area of Sonoma as a city have certain things that allow the child to create and to play and to climb and to interact with others. And I think this is such a beautiful neighborhood. That's such a beautiful park. We have such a great community in that park of neighbors. We're all active and we're all very communicative with each other. And we'd love to see it kind of enhanced for the children in that neighborhood that have moved in there. Thank you.
My name's Dave Sickert. Excuse me, I recognize a few faces in the room. 3 points I want to make. Actually 4. I'm a neighbor in that, a member of that neighborhood. I've been there about 20 years. And believe it or not, there are a lot of trees there, but over the last 20 years, we've probably lost 4 or 5 of them to drought and disease and a couple other things. So it's not actually as dense, although that may be an exaggeration, as it once was. The first point I want to make is, Ann, you did a fabulous job capturing the community's input and everybody that was involved in that. I want to thank you for that. It really was great to have those 5 to 6 tables with the neighbors involved and providing feedback. Second point I want to make is my hat's off to any company that can have its 2 offices in Petaluma and Santa Cruz. So hats off to you. And the third is that one of the key things that came out of that I think you would acknowledge was added that wasn't there first was the perimeter. During the drought, when a lot of stuff was shut off, the perimeter we lost it. And in fact, quite often what has happened, and it's had to be cleaned up a couple times, is the weeds have gotten out of control, and it looks really bad. So right now, there's not a whole lot there. So I think everybody that was at that meeting loves this, and whoever brought it forth and initiated the design, hats off to them as well. One of the things we'd like to see added and emphasized is let's fix the outside while we're there, because it frankly doesn't look that good. So thank you all for taking your time to look at this, and thank you for your work.
See anything on Zoom?
There are no hands raised on Zoom.
Okay. I'll bring it back to the commission for any further comments, questions, suggestions. If not, I'll call for a motion.
Yeah, and what staff is recommending tonight is approval for the conceptual design and a recommendation that staff move forward with the creation of the construction plans.
I move to approve the conceptual design and staff's recommendation to move forward with the construction plans.
Second.
Commissioner Cullinan? Yes. Commissioner Mizuraka? Aye. Commissioner Tolbert?
Aye.
Chair Donnelly?
Yes.
Commissioner Perez Allen?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Ann.
Maria.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Maria.
Good, how are you? Hope to see you again.
Maybe I'll recuse myself this time. Okay, I think we're all here, ready to go. We're up to agenda item 4.4, presentation to the Commission of Draft of City of Sonoma Parks Needs Assessment. And we welcome you, Sarah. You're going to give us the staff presentation.
I am. Good evening. My name is Sarah Tracy. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a senior management analyst with the city, and I am stepping, maybe I elbowed in a little bit, to help Public Works finalize this draft park needs assessment that is being presented tonight. So the purpose of this agenda item is to present the draft report to the commission. Thank you. And we are soliciting your insights and feedback tonight. The commission's input will be used to refine the report before its finalization and continue the implementation of the plan, or pardon me, the report. So little background that wasn't included in the staff report. Had a good time going down memory lane. In December of 2020, the City of Sonoma Public Works Department faced a significant transition of key personnel, including the street supervisor, park supervisor, water supervisor, and at the time we had an interim part-time director. So lots of change at that moment. So with them, when they retired, they took their decades worth of institutional knowledge with them. Subsequent staff filling those roles identified there was a critical need to evaluate the city's parks. And this evaluation aimed to identify maintenance deficiencies, assess potential project backlogs, evaluate service delivery, and examine how the parks function as a system. This had not been done before. So in March 2022, the City of Sonoma Public Works Department conducted the city's first comprehensive park assessment, examining the current condition of all city-owned parks and identifying areas for improvement. This initiative played a pivotal role in establishing park improvement priorities and identifying projects to pursue in the budget cycle. While initially intended as an internal document, staff used the assessment to prioritize and identify initiatives for inclusion in the 2023-2024 CIP, which is, of course, the capital improvement plan I'm sure you're all familiar with. The City Council approved the one-year CIP as part of that budget, and two initiatives, including the Olson Park Improvement Project and, as you just did, the Sonoma Valley Oaks Enhancement Project are already in progress as a result. It just so happens, months after completing this assessment and preceding the formation of this commission, the Parks and Recreation Task Force, which you're familiar with, I presume, proposed a process for Measure M project consideration, which identified how a parks assessment project might be addressed in the future. So although this recommendation was not formally presented or adopted, it is worth noting as part of this discussion because I think I've heard it come up once or twice. So this was a suggested 6-step process that involved city staff conducting a parks assessment, collaborating with the task force members to identify Measure M funding eligible projects, prioritizing projects, compiling project descriptions and budgetary information, presenting those to the pros for your and the public input, and finally, pros making recommendations to City Council on which Measure M funded projects might be included in the CIP as part of the budget process for that year. Just side note, it's essential to recognize that such assessments demand significant staff time and expertise. Typically, these are performed by dedicated parks and recreation departments, which the city is lacking. While commendable progress has been made by Public Works in this particular comprehensive assessment, additional support would likely be needed to develop and pursue a process like the one recommended by the task force, which of course emphasizes the potential benefits of establishing a dedicated Parks and Rec department with sustainable tax-based funding, as has been discussed in past meetings. So, next steps, following the Commission's discussion and feedback, the Parks Assessment Report will be refined and the final report will be presented to you again. So I really, as much as this implementation has already been underway, clearly the assessment was used to make decisions in the CIP and we are moving forward with projects. Your feedback still remains very valuable to us and we appreciate you for that. Thank you for your time and your collaborative efforts to continue enhancing our parks. And I will turn it over to Mr. Berger to talk about the plan specifically and to go into detail there.
Sarah, thank you for that wonderful historical perspective, background, the original objectives that were intended, and next steps in conclusion. And before you tonight was one of the action items that Public Works and the city have been working on, authorized by City Council, implemented in this year's budget to work on Sonoma Valley Oaks Park. And it was approved not 15 minutes ago. Tonight, we're on this agenda item, we're talking about a presentation to the commission of a draft report of the Sonoma Parks Needs Assessment. And in summary, the city of Sonoma takes pride in overseeing and managing a total of 14 urban and neighborhood parks within its boundaries. Recognizing the importance of providing high-quality recreational spaces for its residents, the city embarked on a comprehensive parks assessment to evaluate the needs of its parks. The primary objective was to gain a thorough understanding of the park system in order to effectively allocate park maintenance, staffing, resources, and capital improvement funds. This assessment also aimed to align with the recommendations put forth by the Recreation Task Force, which would contribute to the development of a robust list of parks projects. These projects would strategically utilize Measure M funding and other general funds and other funds to enhance the infrastructure of cities' parks and create an enjoyable experience for the community. In March 2022, a dedicated team of city staff carried out the park assessments. The staff team conducting the assessment consisted of the Public Works Operations Manager, the Project Manager, and the Park Supervisor, ensuring a comprehensive multidisciplinary approach to the assessment process. Their collective expertise and insights were instrumental in identifying not only the immediate needs of individual parks, but also recognizing opportunities for improvements that would benefit multiple parks and the community at large. The field assessments were meticulously conducted with careful attention paid to a variety of most aspects of the parks. The team examined various elements, including park facilities, amenities, infrastructure, landscaping, accessibility, and community engagement opportunities. The focus extended beyond basic requirements, taking into account the unique characteristics and potential of each park. The aim was to develop a holistic understanding of the park's conditions and identify areas where enhancements could provide the greatest value and impact. Building upon the information gathered during the field assessment, city staff diligently prepared a comprehensive report detailing the findings. This report serves as a valuable resource outlining the specific needs and recommendations identified throughout the assessment process. To provide a clear overview, the report includes Table 1, which succinctly summarizes the major infrastructure improvements recommended for the city-owned parks. The table serves as a guide for prioritizing and planning future projects, ensuring that the allocated resources are utilized effectively, and that the city's parks continue to evolve and meet the evolving needs and expectations of the community. The Parks Assessment represents a significant step in the City of Sonoma's commitment to providing exceptional recreational spaces for its residents by conducting thorough evaluations, engaging with the Recreation Task Force and pros, and incorporating public input. The city is well positioned to make informed decisions that will enhance the park system and foster a vibrant and inclusive community environment. As Sarah mentioned earlier, the recommended commission action tonight is to receive and discuss. There's no real impact, no real action required. However, we want to get input and feedback tonight and in the future. Going into the report, the assessment, this has been divided up into, as we noted, 14 of the city's urban parks. We do have additional parks that were not included in this, including Sonoma Overlook, Montini Preserve, and others. But the ones that we included were the more recreational, traditional city parks. We have summarized 14 parks that were assessed in the table on page 2. This table includes evaluating substrate, installation or improvement of bike racks, evaluating the dog policy, which that's something also separate that I'm looking into. Public Works is looking into. There are different criteria in different parks for dogs, and I'm working with planning to try to just decipher what our policy is, what our municipal code reflects, and whether or not the signage in the different parks reflects all the rules that we have. We also looked at renovating restrooms and a number of other items that are listed in the table. The dots indicate areas where the parks needed improvement. On page 3, there's a map of not only the 14 parks that we have and that we evaluated in the city, but also the additional parks that are in the city system that weren't included in the assessment. On page 4, we get into assessment methods and the criteria that was used for evaluation. We are available to answer any questions or expand on that in any detail if requested. And then also, figure 2 on page 5 takes a look at the city park service area. And what we did was we established a radius that we felt was the inclusive area that people could easily bicycle or walk to individual parks in different neighborhoods. And as you can see, we got a fairly good amount of coverage on the northeastern part of town. We have a fairly good amount of coverage on the southwest part of town. We have coverage on the southeast, and we have coverage on the northwest. And there's a big space that's indicated in red where there is no city park, and the coverage associated with the different parks for walking and biking isn't easily traversed in that area. Something to note. Additionally, we have existing infrastructure improvement projects that we contemplated that are summarized on the top of page 6, and then CAP projects, new and expanded, on the bottom of page 6. We added in 8 projects that have been introduced in the report. As you know, number 1, Olson Park improvements is underway. Number 2, development of a new park at 5th Street West and West MacArthur Street. That is being contemplated and scheduled. Number 3, addition of a playground structure at Sonoma Valley Oaks Park. We're getting under preliminary design for that right now. That was approved by the commission and recommended to move forward tonight. And then also underway is the Depot Park volleyball court replacement and exercise area expansion. Depot Park volleyball court replacement is underway, and we do have another project up at Depot Park that is civil improvements of the bathroom, the structure, the pathway that goes to the structure, and the playground improvements. Now, some of the other projects that are directly related to parks that aren't on that list are number 9, the Depot Park HVAC improvement project, currently underway. That project is scheduled to be wrapped up within probably 4 to 6 weeks, including field work and starting project paperwork wrap up. We also have undertaken some significant tree work in the last couple of years that included a tree project that we just finished at Depot Park, the Plaza Tree project, where we took the Plaza Tree assessment that was done, and we completed a project that took all of the highly in need of trimming and the next highest category, which I believe were category 5, and we addressed all those trees that were in most need of getting trimmed that probably hadn't been trimmed in 20 or 30 years. And our commission member arborist was at the site doing evaluations of not only the park's trees, Plaza trees, but also he was just up at Depot Park doing evaluations as we worked on that. And then we started off this earlier this year with Field of Dreams and did a needed maintenance task up there to trim all the trees at Field of Dreams. So we've been busy, and we've been getting a lot of deferred maintenance projects, and we're getting to the finish line on a lot of them and starting out on a lot of others. Primarily the two, Sonoma Valley Oaks and Olson Park. Now, after that summary on page 6, we get into our individual assessments. These are related to all the different items that were reflected and summarized in the table. And it's a one-by-one park assessment. There's more information on here, including the acreage of the parks, the type of park, the significant trees, whether or not there's playgrounds. All those different items have been assessed and summarized in these different summaries that we put together for the different parks. And here again, we can answer questions on any individual topics that come up tonight on that. The last park there represented is Plaza Park, our centerpiece, the centerpiece of the town. And then on the final page of the report, we've got summary and next steps, which we can talk about any of that tonight also. One of the things I wanted to emphasize with the commission tonight is that this is baseline data. We took it upon, Public Works took it upon themselves to go out and gather this data and put it in this report. As Sarah mentioned, it originally was not intended to go anywhere other than as an internal document. However, it's a perfect thing to bring to pros and to have pros comment, take a look at it, and help us plot our path forward. But this is baseline data. This is the first step that we're taking here to assess our 14 different local parks. There is a broader effort underway that is going to include a more comprehensive examination, as we've talked about at previous meetings, talking about the Parks and Rec Task Force and the Potrero study that was previously completed. It didn't get finished, every aspect of it, and Sarah mentioned that a little bit tonight earlier. So this is part of a bigger picture process that the city's working on, and it's a snapshot in time. And in a year, we may want to go out and do another assessment, and we may want to add 2 or 3 more different characteristics that we want to assess. And with that, I'm going to go ahead, and this concludes staff's presentation, and we'll open the subject up for any discussion from the commission.
Thank you. We really appreciate having this and how much work has gone into it. And so it's really great that we have this information and this study. So let's see who has some comments, questions.
So thank you. This is really great. One of the things that I notice, because I use almost all the parks in the sense I ride my bike with my dogs. The end of Friar Creek, I think the connection around the circulation, it's really great. You can cross Broadway, go to the Friar Creek, and then Friar Creek ends on 3rd Street West, and but that's also access to the bike path, and kind of being aware that there's quite a few people who make that circle, and maybe some improvements, bike lane or something on 3rd Street. It's just something, and I really appreciate all the work, because you really have a vision of where all our parks are. And, I know where all the hidden ones are because I ride my bike. Anyway, this is a wonderful document, and thank you for sharing it with us, because we make all these decisions, and it puts everything in context. Thank you.
I echo everything everybody said. This is an awesome document. I think for me, I'm really focused, for the purposes of this discussion, I'm really focusing on page 6 and 34, just because we could get lost in the trees, to use an appropriate metaphor. So just keeping it high level. So the CIP budget for 2023, and presumably now we're talking about 2024 at this point, we've obviously allocated the dollars throughout the course of these last 4 meetings we've had together. And so I think what would be really helpful, perhaps in a special meeting or in a subcommittee of some sort, is to have a really good picture of the financial information coupled with the main infrastructure improvement projects that are recommended by staff that we, consider for prioritization. Because some of the things you mentioned, Mike, so the tree cutting, does that fall into the CIP budget or is that maintenance? Because I think of capital improvement as being the fixed stuff, but maybe I'm wrong. Is there a maintenance budget and a CIP budget? That's what I'm kind of conflating right now.
There is a maintenance budget and a CIP budget. The CIP budget is much more diverse. It can include, well, for instance, Olson Park has Quimby funds associated with it.
Right.
And this was part of the criteria that was used by staff to evaluate where to do one of our projects. When we have Quimby funds that are directly tied to that area, Olson is in that area. And then as the table shows, Olson has a lot of deficiencies. It was, I'm not saying an easy decision, but it was a decision that was made, taking a lot of factors into consideration. Now, when you start talking about, the different tree projects that we're doing, well, those aren't necessarily CIP. They're fairly big projects that involve planning work, plans, consultation. We're not putting plan specifications and an estimate. Well, we're putting an estimate together, but those are pretty much paid usually with general fund money, which there's a component of general fund money in a lot of our different CIP projects also. So a lot of it comes from the same source.
So I get that it weighs on Public Works from a capacity standpoint because you have to prioritize the projects as Public Works, but the funding doesn't necessarily come from the CIP budget for those tree projects, correct?
Both the CIP projects and the tree projects share general fund money, which there's only so much of it to go around. So if we do a tree
but the
project
budget itself, so are you, let's say there's $100 in the budget. If you do a tree trimming project, does $40 come out of that CIP budget or does it come out of some other area of the general fund? That's my question.
the tree money does not come out of the CIP budget.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. So we really should, at least for our purposes, to help, Public Works, to really focus our energies on some of these CIP projects that staff is recommending as a part of this assessment needs to happen over the long term. I'm talking about
You're looking
page
at page 6, yeah.
Yeah.
And let me just turn there and
It seems to me like the playground, so the first 2 items on the top of the page, infrastructure improvement projects that could achieve economies of scale, for lack of a better term, because they apply to multiple parks, are obviously probably some of the more expensive line items, but naturally are being recommended as being the things we should consider as high priority. Is that right?
Yeah, and that's something, not having a CIP for it already, it's good vision that you're talking about. And I haven't dedicated a whole lot of time to what we're going to be. We have a 5-year plan and we have discussed CIP project 5-year plan. This years 2 through 5 are a vision. Year 1 is budgeted and approved by council, and we're currently working on everything that was for fiscal year 23-24, which runs from July 1st of this year to June 30th of next year. That is currently budgeted fiscal year 23-24. So as you know, we're currently working on that. All that money's been budgeted and allotted, and we're working on those projects. 24-25 is not budgeted. We have a plan for that, and part of it's going to be finishing Olson, finishing Sonoma Valley Oaks, and finishing other projects that we get started this year and next year. And so thinking about what could be done on item number 1 on page 6, where we could come up with a substrate project, a replacement, and a shade structure project in multiple parks. That's a great thing to consider.
Great. So do you think it would be beneficial for this commission to really focus on the 24-25 budget, and what are the asks that we're going to make as far as these major improvements? Because what I'm hearing from the community is it's wonderful to have all these, big improvement projects going on for Olson and Sonoma Valley Oaks, et cetera, but there's a lot of maintenance-ish items within the parks themselves that are lower hanging fruit, whether it's replacing substrate or fixing a water fountain or, dealing with the perimeter of what have you park, that at least to me, that feels like being echoed by the community, that, signage of what the rules are and, a number of things that were listed in here that are a little bit more low hanging fruit and not such big capital improvement items that are going to take a big chunk out of the budget. So I'm just curious your thoughts on, or the commission's thoughts on, maybe if we could tackle, what are some of our priorities for 24-25 that, other than the projects we have ongoing, that we want to tackle? Just thinking ahead to next year's budget.
And Mike and I have talked about this, that we have this information on the CIP budget. In fact, it's on the city website, the fiscal year 2022-24, and then the section for Public Works has the 5-year plan for the Public Works and Parks projects. So I think we've agreed it would be nice, in addition to this wonderful needs assessment that you've done in the 14 parks, that we also have this capital improvements project so that we can begin to we can work with you to help build this. And I want to add here, because it's true that you've done this and now giving it to the Pros Commission, but we don't have the community engagement that really was called for in terms of a survey, focus out group survey of the community, what they want and need. And so this is where I think we need to work together, because the city manager has put a pause honoring the heavy demands on public works staff. I understand that. But he also wants to have a ballot in a year from now to people to pay a sales tax to support a new Parks and Rec department. And it seems to me that we ought to be exploring how are we going to pull this information together, but also begin to involve the community in terms of some kind of outreach. And I talked to Karen Collins and Steve Page a bit when they left off of the task force, and the Catalyst Fund is apparently willing to still help do this almost on a voluntary basis. And what I would like to see is we begin to explore together with them how we're going to build this momentum and this campaign for a Parks and Rec department. And to do that, we need to work with you, and we need to have the information that you're looking at too. So you see, if we wait until we get a Parks and Rec department and the public isn't involved in this, Sarah, you have some thoughts on this?
Not a lot of thoughts, but I did just want to also bring up the point that the city is currently going through a general plan update process, which is a very comprehensive process, and there is a portion of that where there's parks master plans and things are often wrapped into general plans. There's circulatory elements, all these elements that also relate to Parks and Recreation. So there is a process for that does include a lot of engagement. We've already started with the very basics of that. So Jennifer Gates, who was here earlier, has been doing the preliminary work. Some of you may have gone to some of those public meetings, or there's an online questionnaire for those of you who didn't, just a little plug. But there will be opportunities to talk about those resources within that process as well. So it's not, that was part of some of the questions when we were talking about doing community engagement around resources and what the community wants, is that we knew we were going to be going through this massive project through the general plan, where we were going to have an opportunity to do that in a structure and a contractor already who's contracted to do this, and websites dedicated to it, and all these tools at our availability to really be able to access that, rather than maybe doing two competing processes, or one a little ahead of the other before we were ready to really plug it into the rest of the plans for the general plan, which looks at so many other things. So I want to just add that to the conversation to address some of some of the desires I'm hearing, because it is a holistic view, right? And part of that process.
That's really good news, and I appreciate that. But what would you say, how could we, the Pros Commission, be involved in that more general plan outreach, including involving Steve, Paige, and Karen from the task force? I think they still have a strong interest in seeing the work they've started carry over. So it'd be nice if we could have that dialogue or that partnership.
Agreed. And I will be sitting down with Jennifer soon to understand what the communications plan is for the update. This is a long process. It's a 2-year process. It's not, we haven't missed any boats. We're just at the beginning. So there will be different elements that come at different times. And when it's time to pay attention to certain general plans are made up of elements. So we, for example, we went through our housing element update, which is part of a general plan, and there's other types, transportation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So when the time comes to work with the commission, make everybody aware, certainly we will be polling you all for participation in that. I understand the process is very similar to information gathering and input gathering that she has been, well, the Community Development Department in general has been doing to just get initial feedback. Will also be done for individual elements. So I'm still learning about that, but I will certainly be active in it, and I am very excited to hear that you're interested in it, and amplification and using all of our community resources, of which Steve Page and Karen Collins are 2 wonderful resources, that we would, of course, reach out to everybody to try to get their involvement in that.
Thank you.
And Sarah, at the risk of oversimplifying, my understanding, I went to one of the general plan sessions, and it was great. You know, it's like mission statement. What do we want to be known for? What's our legacy? It's a 20-year plan, effectively, for, you know, when my kids are in college. So I love the big picture thinking and sort of tying all the elements back to the general plan. It does feel a bit duplicative because we've got, you know, a 5-year parks plan that Mike mentioned, and we've got, you know, our strategic plan, and things have to keep moving in this 2-year time frame. And so at the risk of oversimplifying, my understanding at the general plan session was like that had a lot to do with zoning and how the city was going to be set up go forward for what areas could be zoned certain way, and not necessarily related to, you know, a recreation outreach for how we better, you know, engage our nonprofit partners, for example, or programming partners that list on the website, you know, all the work that the task force did. Like, to me, they were related, but one is sort of, you know, very in the weeds, and the other is like way up here. And so I'm just curious, like, how, you know, effectively that's going to tie together in terms of community outreach.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I was not paying attention the last time we did our general plan update. I was not in that phase of life. So I will be learning. I don't think I have a succinct answer to give you on that right now. I am still learning about how detail oriented they're getting, but I think there's a lot of in between steps. It's not just general plan, but when I know the task force was really advocating for this kind of master plan, which is really much like a general plan. So that's what I'm kind of speaking to, is that kind of overall view, which is a really a global view of that. So there's also little bits of that, which, like you've rightly mentioned, that we're going to have to come up with prioritizations for next year's budget. And I think the Parks and Rec Task Force, part of my mentioning of their recommendation, which wasn't a formal recommendation, of a process by which the public would have input in that priority list for those projects that were receiving specifically Measure M funds, that was a particular interest of the task force, and something that we noted in the recommendations on this assessment, so that those Measure M funds, which, you know, we didn't have a body to be able to review things, and weren't able to agendize things so folks can come and give their public input at the time, but we do now. So while we're not necessarily asking you to come up with that process tonight, this is kind of a document that gives us, as Mike was saying, that kind of base information. It was a first-time project for our team that did it on their own without even knowing that the task force was looking to recommend that the city start adopting a process for that. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, Mike, that this is something that will potentially be brought back to you, not this assessment specifically, but room for discussion on a process moving forward that would certainly give an opportunity for you and the public to have a say in how those funds are spent, and also to do what you were saying, which is look at the CIP, which is part of the budget process, which is a public process. So I think you all will be more engaged with that this year as well. You're a new body. So I think there's going to be a lot more opportunities for you to put your stamp on it. Did that answer your question? I know it was, okay, thank you.
It answered mine, for sure.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Any public comment?
What do you view as next steps as it relates to this, Mike? Like, let's talk, just because we're not going to meet again until, what is it, March or something? Yeah. So just curious, like, how can we best review, agendize anything, if at all? Just looking for your opinion, truly.
Most definitely. And thank you. One of the things that the chair's already focused on is getting the commission some detailed budget documents, which, I mean, these are a part of my life. And I take it for granted that anybody that would be interested would go the step of going to a council meeting where we're going to talk about the budget. And sometimes I overlook the fact that these aren't a part of everybody's life. And we have detailed documents that are included in the annual budget that anybody can have access to. And what the chair and I have discussed is making those available to the commission. This is a great first step because this gives you the snapshot of what we're currently working on, what we're thinking about working on, and how it's all being paid for. Everything isn't in here. For instance, our RFB project actually is in here. It's a CAP project, but it's kind of like the tree projects. We do it with our own forces and a little bit of contractor help when we get time. But all of our CAPs are in here. They're scheduled on an annual basis for how much money's going into them. They're also scheduled for what the different funds are that are contributing to them. So it's all here for view, and not just parks projects. We've got our streets projects in here, our creeks and drainage, our transportation, our water, our buildings and facilities. So it's a voluminous document. It's great reading material right before bedtime, but we're gonna push out a little bit of information to the commission after the meeting that they can do some further research and take a look at the different components of how these projects are put together, and also the schedule. So one of the things that we've been struggling with as a commission since we got started is what to do with the things that the task force didn't complete, and how we pick that up and run with it and not lose the effort that was done. We've spent not entire meetings, but probably the majority of certain meetings talking about that, listening to them give presentations, and I feel that we're already working on it. We've gone back. We got a great overview tonight from Sarah of probably just the high points, just some bullet points of what the task force was working on and their history, and continuing to incorporate that into this group moving forward is the goal. And getting the pros commission synced in with getting community input, and it's a lot easier for me to speak from a parks CIP standpoint. Getting community input, taking that input, trying to figure out what the priorities are and how we modify the 5-year plan. The 5-year plan, year 5 is our best guess. And as we get closer to year 1, we get much more refined in what we're going to be doing next year and the year after. But year 5, I mean, that's up for discussion any budget year. So looking at years 5, years 4, years 3, and trying to figure out, as these projects that we currently have in the hopper are getting completed, what are we going to embark on? One of the things that the vice chair brought up tonight was, would we consider doing a substrate shade structure project? Sure. And so what would be our best, from a CAP standpoint, what would be our best way to reach out to the public and to try to understand if that's something that's a priority? And then if the answer is yes, how do we pay for it? And how do we move it forward? And here again, the item that we're bringing tonight before the commission is, this is an in-depth report. This is not going to, I mean, there's a lot of different aspects of this that we're not going to crack the shell on tonight. So what we want to do is we want to probably try to come up with the best way for us to put our comments together and facilitate getting a list of comments for the next meeting and staff could even potentially have those incorporated in the report for the next meeting and circulated to the commission. So lots of different opportunities here. And how we set that up and push and move it forward. I mean, my number one task is going to be what do we, based on what the commission has already seen and what they plan on doing in the next 2 or 3 weeks, reviewing this document. How do we get a path forward for putting that the comments into the document and getting it closer to what we would consider a final copy? So that's an option. Then we can, as I get the information out for the budget, people can take a look at that. With the budget is going to be our 5-year plan. With the 5-year plan, we could try to think, oh, well, what process would we consider on CAP only for changing some of the 5-year plan, prioritizing some of the 5-year plan, and things like that. Now, those are two aspects of, and another aspect is what would we consider, like, not just necessarily a CAP, but depot trees. That was a project that needed to get done. It got brought to us by Bocce and Patonk. We found a way of funding it and getting it done. Plaza trees was something that had been sitting in the hopper for quite a while. We went out and we got the high priority trees trimmed. We still have trees with rankings 1 through 4. Would we consider, and I'm considering it right now, however, I haven't taken time to think about where I would cut it off the parks plaza tree assessment that was done. Would I just contemplate doing trees 3 and 4 rank and leave trees 1 and 2 for a future year? Or would we try to get a contractor to come in and do all of them and get the plaza completed, done, so that we can move on from that? When we did Field of Dreams, it was Field of Dreams brought it to our attention. We did a partnership with Field of Dreams that was approved by council that partnered with them on their deferred maintenance, and that's an ongoing thing. And that's one of our parks that's run by an entity in town here, that bunch of volunteers that do a great job working on that. So a lot of different avenues that we could consider working on, and some of it's CAP, some of it's smaller projects. The recreational component has been brought up a couple of times tonight. As you mentioned, we're trying to just not put the cart before the horse on that and make sure that we're prepped and ready to go when we do make a decision on that. And so I'm just going to stop talking and see if the commission has any comments that they want to make before any of what I said gets lost.
What do commissioners feel about utilizing online surveys to prioritize some of the reflections from this draft report, making it available to the public? Obviously, people aren't going to read 50 pages or whatever, but they might care about their own neighborhood park. and what is listed as far as the needs assessment for their neighborhood park. That could help us engage just between now and the next meeting. If we had some sort of idea of, people really care about the substrate. I'm just using that as an example because it's on here. And how unsafe it is. And we kind of heard those comments. It would help inform us on how we would recommend to City Council what we want to budget for the following year to make sure that that's included in the CIP budget. I'm just curious what people think.
I think that's not a bad idea. I'm sure Sarah has, I'm hoping, an opinion about it. I just want to say that the thing that struck me is when you say an online survey, you can't just do that because it doesn't reach, but, we want to make sure we reach all demographics and,
Sure.
there's different ways of doing it.
Um, so online surveys, I love to get input any way that I can, but I do know that there are some arguments that online surveys may not be the most effective tool. And unfortunately, scientific surveys are expensive. They are usually more efficacious for certain types of applications, which is more of a true, people you pay somebody to do it. They reach out specifically and they get a sample size. And I've sat into a lot of conferences with people talking about them, so I could bore you about them, but I won't. But to kind of talk a little bit more about potential process that might happen, and I'm kind of bringing back in, which is why I just briefly mentioned the recommendation from the task force when they were considering the process, what they seemed to identify, and I hate to speak on their behalf because I really wasn't part of every conversation they had. I was part of one of the small efforts of them, so forgive me, I don't like to speak on other people's behalf, but I was on an email chain where they did have the recommendation for the process to consider projects that would receive Measure M funding. And that, I think, is a realistic outcome of, and in the recommendations here, where there could be a process from which that they had aligned out. It doesn't necessarily have to be that process, but I don't want to speak for you. So anytime, jump in and tell me that I'm overstepping. But so just to remind you of the kind of 6-part, let me see if I can find that handy. So there was the 6-step process. The first step would be to create the park assessment. And I know at that time, what I don't know from that is when they said park assessment, if they were thinking more globally. I know that they were really looking valley-wide. I think it was specific to the city, but again, not to speak on their behalf, I'm making some inferences here. The second part of that was at the time, because the task force was still in operation, was kind of our body at the time, is that they were wanting to be part of the prioritization process with that assessment. So they, together with city staff, would identify 1 to 2 projects that were eligible for a Measure M funding. Then those projects would go back, the city would take those and flesh it out, get a real budget analysis of it, a description of that.
Kind of what we're doing, right?
A little bit, except for a real specific. So I think more what you're talking about. So you would identify kind of after the needs assessment was done, you'd look globally at all the potential out there, and you'd say, imagine we didn't have a prioritization. You were looking at all of these things, and city staff would say, well, these are the ones that could be potentially Measure M funded. And so you look at those and with staff kind of come to an agreement on a selection of projects, however you decided to do that. Then those with the fleshed out budgetary information would come to be agendized on one of your meetings, where then they would be considered by you. And that would be, when we talk about community engagement, that's leading up to that, there could be a piece of that, but that would be the opportunity for people to be able to give public comment. And often, leading up to it, we can really do a strong push to ask people to provide public comments in advance. That's really common when we have kind of public comment periods for certain projects. This isn't exactly like that, but there could be efforts that surround that, using all the tools that we have to encourage people to do that. I'm not discounting doing some type of survey or straw poll or anything else, but it is hard with that data to get really good data about are the people really living here? You know, kind of, did they all receive it? But it is always a nice piece to have. I always say it's a nice piece of the pie to have, but it's not the whole pie. So having lots of opportunities for people to give input and making sure you weigh those appropriately is always important. So did that kind of answer your question there?
So Mike, you'll tell us which ones of these are eligible for Measure M money? Not right now. I'm saying
Yeah.
in the future.
Yeah, and Sarah, that was an excellent summary. Thank you. I couldn't have said it better myself. And yeah, so given the information that's been presented tonight, I think having a discussion with the commission about direction, suggestions, and what we can get accomplished between now and the next meeting would be a great next step.
And just one thing to add there for those of us who may be trying to finalize the document so we can put it out for the public to be able to access, any comments you have on the specific document, I know that we are adjusting, like the map got a little cut off and it's kind of those little things, but I think we caught all the spelling errors and street names. We all have different ways we spell our streets. But any of those types of comments specifically on the document that you think should be addressed before we finalize it and make it public would be of particular interest to me. So thank you.
Do you have a target date for when you want to finalize it?
I don't, but I know that, we've waited 18 months. So no time like the present. I don't specifically have a time frame there unless it's the wish of the council or the commission to have it at a specific time. If you have a date that you'd like it prepared by, I'd like to know that too.
Well, we meet in 3 months, March 13th. Would that be something that we could do between now and then, do you think?
I think we could figure that
Yeah,
out, depending on how many comments there are. Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mike, it looks like you wanted to add something.
Well, and I think a more realistic goal for next meeting would be to incorporate comments and bring back a draft for further discussion to see if we've hit everything adequately. And then in between this time and then though, how are we going to measure public input incorporation into the document? I think that's more of a priority to try to figure out to what extent we're going to go and incorporate that into the document before we start thinking about a finish date.
Well, I agree about how we're going to structure public input. I got this right. And I like what Sarah was saying, but also, again, Karen Collins said this woman, I think her name is Lendell from the Catalyst Fund, who also has a lot of experience in doing community outreach. So I would like to see if we couldn't get together and find out what would be the best way between now and, as you say, Mike, that's the next step, is really how are we going to obtain some kind of community engagement and feedback on what they'd like to see beyond what's in the reports that we have so far.
Yeah, so again, that's a little bit more because that is a really big question.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think that that's going to necessarily be accomplished in the next 3 months for consideration by the commission. Is that what you were thinking?
I'm thinking that we'd start the discussion on how to do it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think
Yeah.
that might be a little bit of a separate issue that could be brought back as a separate agenda item, as opposed to attaching it to the assessment document per se. So they're a little bit kind of two separate things. There's like a process that we would like to eventually, which I think may be appropriate to bring back next meeting, but it's not my commission. So I'll let them decide. But the document and the receiving of the assessment itself and finalizing it to make sure we could get it to the public would be the first step. And then developing a process to do a more public engagement piece. And there's kind of two sides to that. So in my mind, with the assessment and the prioritization we have, there's a process by which you would consider specifically Measure M funded projects, which was identified as the task force, versus a global, correct, a more like I said, the master plan concept, which is really more talking about, they really were talking about recreation classes that we don't feel are filled. And it was a very, very, very broad reaching idea. So I think they might be kind of a little bit, there's kind of two separate pieces in there to discuss, if I'm hearing correctly.
Well, thank you. I think we're getting the big picture much clearer now, and we appreciate all the work you've done and that you're willing to help us understand more fully what your decision-making process is like and how we can be more informed about it and how we can be part of the dialogue on how we set these priorities. So thank you. Any other discussion from the commission? Suggestions?
Mike, there's been a little bit of chatter that I've heard in the community about the maintenance contracts with whoever contracted to maintain the parks outside of the city, like the landscaping firms and so forth. Is there any way we can review or understand what those contracts look like? Are they 5 years? Are they 1 year? Are they 10 years?
Yeah, there's not very many.
Great.
Yeah. I'm only aware of one up at the cemetery. So
the veteran cemetery. The rest are all city employees. Okay.
yeah, now that doesn't, I mean, we get help doing a lot of different work at a lot of different spots, but that's on a case by case, one-time basis,
Huh. Okay.
like tree trimming, things like that. Landscaping, maybe sometimes, but these are case by case from a maintenance standpoint. And
Okay. I think if there's no further questions or discussion on that item, I think we can move to Parks and Recreation Commissioners' reports and comments, and then turn to the staff before we adjourn. Any commissioners have comments or things to report?
I have a comment regarding the bike path, and it is, it's a little pet peeve because I spend a lot of time on the bike path, and it is the motorized and e-bikes. I brought this up probably a couple meetings back, and I know it's something the police department probably doesn't have the resources to enforce, but it's a health and safety issue when people are zipping down the bike path on an e-bike. Just this week, I saw an e-bike, a motorized bike, and then somebody walking their e-bike, which was nice to see. So I'm thinking the solution might be better signage saying they're prohibited, and then perhaps a hefty fine if they ignore the regulation. So I don't know. It's getting late. I don't think we're going to hammer this out. Maybe we could put it on next meeting's agenda.
we can do that, Commissioner Tolbert, and I have looked into this. The city does have a policy on this, and e-bikes are allowed on the pathways. However, there's breakdown for which ones are allowed. And with the, we've become very porous with the battery bikes these days. There's a lot of new ones on bike paths, on bike trails, etc. We're driving around town. But there is a Muni code that addresses which e-bikes are and aren't allowed, and it goes into scooters, e-bikes, motorized skateboards, etc. And so what I can do is I can provide the, that's available in the Muni code, which is online. I can provide the link to that you could look at. And we have looked into this. I started working with Jennifer on it. We do need to do some little modifications to the code to probably encompass some of the newer introductions, because some of these are fast and there's level 1, level 2 is my understanding. And so I can send you over the information on that and send it to the entire commission.
Hypothetically, would we advise city council on reviewing that ordinance or that Muni code and changing it if it needed to be updated and didn't include some of the available bikes now?
Yeah, we could look into taking that up as a future agenda item.
Great.
Yeah.
The problem I've noticed on the bike path with bikes, both electric and just regular bikes, is that bicyclists don't call out when they say on your left or on your right. People suddenly turn around, there's a bike crashing into you. So it's a kind of a cultural etiquette thing. And I remember in the bicycle clubs, but bikers think it's a bike trail. They say, what are all those walkers doing on it? And the walkers think, oh, this is a walking trail. So it's a question. That's the dangerous, I think, is when they don't warn you that they're coming up on you. So other comments?
I just wanted to acknowledge that the Plaza Park playground, the sand was allocated around at, I think, my request and many other people's, and lots of people have had really favorable feedback. So thank you for taking care of that. It's much safer at the bottom of the slide and at the climbing up part. It's much safer. So thanks.
Yeah, we're doing routine maintenance on that more frequently. Thank you for the suggestion. And then I just want to clarify, we do have a couple of contracts. These aren't necessarily park contracts, especially the parks that we looked at in the study. We do the mowing, the irrigation, the small tree trimming, bush trimming, weeding, etc. at all the different parks that are presented in the table, the 14 parks. Now, if you look at the park on Nathanson Creek Oxbow, we pay contractors to do work on that, and that's SEC. And that falls more into the category of Montini Preserve and the Overlook Trail, which also we have contracts for those parks. So I thought that your question was more relative to the 14 parks and the parks that are being presented in the report. But I've just perused our budget for the for parks maintenance, and we do have those park contracts for the demo garden on MacArthur and the Oxbow Preserve right there at the creek on MacArthur in between 2nd Street and Broadway. Yeah. So right in that area just east of MacArthur Place on both sides of the street. We've got the demo garden on the south side and the Oxbow Preserve on the north side. And there are contracts that that do work in those areas, along with Montini Preserve and Sonoma Overlook Trail.
And that's not that park we're talking about on MacArthur, next to MacArthur Place, is not on this report.
I believe that is correct.
It's on there.
It is on there?
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
And that's a demo garden. But I could, there's Oxbow on the north side and the demo garden on the south side. Yeah.
It might. Preserve. I think Nathanson Creek Park is on that, and I don't know if the preserve is.
The preserve.
Oh, it is on
The
there.
preserve is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We didn't list the Oxbow specifically, or they didn't when they did the assessment, but the Nathanson Creek Preserve is, I believe, the area you're referring to.
I think it might say something about the Oxbow on there. Yeah. We read that.
Anybody else from the commission have comment? I'll just add that the tree committee, as you know, was pushing to move from a more reactive, approving tree removals to trying to see where the city policies could be changed to promote urban forest canopy growth. And so out of that, Jennifer Gates is heading up a joint study meeting for the tree committee. It includes the Pros Commission, the Climate Action Commission, and the Planning Commission representatives. We had our first meeting November 20th. The next one is January 23. And we started by reviewing what needs fixing. Obviously, we need to fix that we have an outdated tree inventory, and we don't have an urban forest canopy plan in the city, so that's what probably needs to be added, and we'll be exploring that. So I just wanted you to know that that is going forward, and the next meeting will be late January, so if you have any thoughts or want to participate, let me know. And with that, does staff have any further comments or?
Yeah, some of the stuff we've already touched on tonight. I just wanted to bring to everybody's attention the Depot Tree Project has been completed. That involved the trimming of the eucalyptus on the north side of bocce and petanque south of the park that we contemplated doing removals of those trees, and what we ended up on was to take them all down for budgetary reasons. We could handle that contract to make the trees safe for the time being. We haven't lost sight of the fact that 8 of those trees in there do have some issues of concern. However, they've been trimmed. They're adequate from a safety standpoint for the time being. We are still going to continue looking at doing a removal of, I believe there's 8 trees up there. And then we will also look into saving some of those potentially, because just the emphasis these days is on saving trees, not cutting them down. And so there's an update on that. We did do some selective tree trimming by request of some of the users of the park at individual locations outside of those eucalyptus, because we had a contractor up there. And so we got that taken care of while we were there. The AED project in the plaza, that's complete. Both the AEDs are done. They're in the locations that were approved by the commission. And we haven't had to use them yet. This is a good thing, but they're there and they're ready to be used when we do. As the chair mentioned, upcoming dates, we have the the Joint Commission for the tree meeting on 1/23/24. Our next meeting is 3/13/24. We published our 4 quarterly meeting dates, and you should all be notified on those. And then in early 2024, January or February, we are going to have the Council Goal Setting Commission. The date for that hasn't been set yet, but that'll be the first meeting that will start our goal setting, which would lead into budget talks. And obviously the budget needs to be finalized by 6:30. The last item on my agenda here is just working the plaza, update on the Big Belly trash cans and the bike racks that we're putting in. We've received at the 9/3/23 pros meeting, we had we gave you an update that we were expecting to have the Big Bellies delivered in November, and that the goal was to be installing them in the plaza over the winter. We're on track with that. The Big Bellies have arrived, and we also have possession of the bike racks, and the goal is still to be installing those in the winter. And we'll probably get the bike racks done first, but both of those will get done in the winter months. I'm anticipating January, February, and that's it for the staff update, unless there's any questions.
Yeah, I have a question on the eucalyptus trees. My understanding is you were going to do that in phases, and this first phase was to take them down. Is there a timeline for the next phase?
Not yet developed. I would say we'd move on that within the next year or two. Yeah, and selectively, it would be nice to get in next budget year, 23, 24, 25. It would be nice to get 4 of those 8 removed. Yeah. A+ is a great company. Kudos to them. They've done an excellent job on Field of Dreams, Depot, and the Plaza. They're doing a great job, and we're pretty fortunate. We got a lot of good tree companies around here that give us very competitive prices. But A+ has been on the selection on those 3 projects, and they've just done an excellent job.
I won't be able to hear you on the recording.
Yes, ma'am.
Hearing no further comments or points of view, I'm going to adjourn this meeting at 8:18. Wishing you all happy holidays, happy New Year, peace on earth. Thank you all. This is a team effort, and it's a great team. Thank you.
You're a fantastic chair.
Oh.
You're a fantastic
Thank you.
As I knew you would be.
Thank you.
Mike, don't go away.